ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुदस्तुन्नन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। ॐ श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। Now we are continuing the discussion of Shankaracharya's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. There are some verses in the Gita which, if you interpret literally, could be construed as favoring the doctrine of Jnana-Karma Samucchayavada. I mean the doctrine that upholds the view that the central theme of Bhagavad Gita is a combination or a synthesis of rituals and knowledge. So next the Bhashyagara takes up some of those verses and throws some light on how we must interpret those verses. Yacha purvaihi purvataram kritam karmanaiva hi samsiddhim asita janakadeha idi tattu pravibhajya vijneyam. So Bhashyagara is referring to two important verses in the Gita. The first one is from the third chapter. So in the third chapter there is a verse Karmanaiva ki samsiddhim asita janakadeha lokasangrahamevapi sampasyin kartumarkasi. This is the verse in the third chapter, the 20th verse. By rituals, by action alone, great philosopher kings of ancient times like Janaka attained perfection or the highest realization. Now, therefore, keeping this in mind, you work for the welfare of the world. That's the literal translation of this verse. Another verse that is quoted is Purvaihi Purvataram Kritam. That comes in the fourth chapter. Evam jnatva kritam karma purvairapi mumukshubhihi kuru karmaiva tasmatvam purvaihi purvataram kritam. So Bhashyagara's purpose, his intention is to bring out these verses and to show clearly that these verses do not actually support Jnana-Karma Samucchayavada. So the verse is Evam jnatva kritam karma purvairapi mumukshubhihi kuru karmaiva tasmatvam purvaihi purvataram kritam. Literally it means this. In ancient times, great spiritual seekers performed action. Therefore, you too should perform actions as the ancient masters performed. This is the literal translation. If you take these two verses literally, maybe there is some scope to interpret these verses, of course wrongly, to support Jnana-Karma Samucchayavada. So Bhashyagara says, in this context, we have to interpret this verse with a sense of proper understanding, understanding the true sense of the word. So Bhashyagara says here there are two ways of understanding Janaka's position. One view is that Janaka was already a realized person. This is one perspective. Another perspective is that Janaka was not a realized person. Now, if you interpret this verse, that is the Karmana evahi samsiddhim asida Janakadeha loka sangrahamevapi sampasyan kartum arhasi. If you interpret this verse, keeping in mind the idea that Janaka was a spiritually perfected person who has reached, who had attained Advaitic realization, that we must interpret the verse to mean that Janaka, even after having realized Advaitic truth, that Jiva Brahmaikyam or Aparakshanabhuti, continued performing his duties and responsibilities for the good of the world, for the welfare of the world, and such actions, when performed without any selfish motive by a realized person, just for the welfare of the world, cannot be construed as action as understood in the Mimamsaka tradition. So, karmana eva hi yasmat purve kshatriyaha vidvamsaha samsiddhim moksham gantum asthitaha pravruttaha janakadeha janaka ashvati prabhudeha. This is the Bhashya on the 20th verse of the 3rd chapter that is quoted by Bhashyakara here. He says that this verse should be properly understood. If you interpret Janaka as a realized person, then we should remember he was performing actions not for his own purpose but for the good of the world. So all great spiritual teachers, even obtaining the highest Advaitic realization, sometime, at least many of them, if not all, many of them continue working for the good of others. They do not have any selfish purpose in mind. Though they have realized the highest and they know that there is nothing more to be attained through action, still they will not keep quiet. They will continue working for the welfare of the world. Of course, in recent times we can see the examples of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Vivekananda, and even the commentator Bhashyakara himself is a classic illustration of this truth, that even after attaining the highest Advaitic realization, he didn't keep quiet. He traveled all over India. He wrote the most marvelous philosophical works, the Prasthanatraya Bhashyas on Upanishads, Gita and Brahma Sutras, the Prakarana Granthas, the devotional hymns and the renovated temples. And Sri Ramakrishna, even after attaining the highest Advaitic realization, continued instructing, teaching and helping spiritual seekers who came to Dakshineshwar temple. Vivekananda, after reaching the highest spiritual realization, he worked for the good of the world. So these are classic examples. So Bhashyakara makes an interesting point. Again, if you go to the Bhashya again, Idi tattu pravibhajya vijneyam. So these two categorical divisions should be understood. You should draw a distinction between those who work with a definite motive, with kartrutva and bhoktrutva. The feeling that I am the doer and I am going to enjoy the results of my actions. Such people on the one hand, and those who have reached the highest Advaitic realization continue to work not for any purpose of their own but for the good of the world. This clear distinction should be kept in mind. That is the message of Bhashyakara. So Purvapakshi, the objector, asked the question, Tat Katham, how do you distinguish? So Bhashyakara says, in Janaka's context, we should interpret the Gita verse according to the position of Janaka. If Janaka was an already realized person, then he must have performed all these actions for the good of the world, for the welfare of mankind, because he believed that he was not doing anything, his senses were engaged in different actions. So you find yedi tavat purve janakadeha tattvavidaha api pravritta karmana sihu te loka sangrahartham guna guneshu vartanti iti jnanena eva samsiddhim astitaha. Karma sannyase prapte api karmana saha eva samsiddhim astitaha na karma sannyasam kritavanta iti esha artha. So here samsiddhim should be understood as atma jnanam. If they had already reached atma jnanam, then karma sannyase prapte api, even after attaining karma sannyasa, the renunciation or transcending of all karma, still though they were capable of renouncing all karmas, they retained a state of being always active in the field of karma for the welfare of others. Along with spiritual realization, they must have worked. Even after spiritual realization, they must have worked, but their work was only for the welfare of the whole world and not for any of their own selfish motives. This should be kept in mind if you interpret the verse as Janaka having attained realization. So, yadi tavat purve janaka deha tattvavidahapi, if they were tattvavids, if they were knowers the highest realization, if they were knowers of Brahman, pravritta karmana sihu, if they were still active, te loka sangrahartham, they were working for the good of the world, whole humanity. And what was their attitude towards their actions? Guna guneshu vartanti, that was their attitude. I mean, senses naturally get engaged in sensory objects. I am Atman, I am the supreme, immanent, omnipresent, transcendental, spiritual reality. I am not doer, I am not enjoyer of any actions. But then senses, following their instincts, engage in different actions according to their samskaras, according to the vasanas. I am totally detached from what the senses do. So gunaha guneshu vartanti iti jnanena eva samsiddhim asitaha. So with this strong conviction and realization that senses follow their natural instincts of being engaged in their respective actions. I am akarta and abhokta. I am not a doer, I am not an enjoyer of my actions. This was the state in which they lived. Karma sannyase prapte api karmana saha eva samsiddhim astitaha. Though they were great tattvavids, knowers of Brahman, who were capable of karma sannyasa, who reached the state of transcending all karmas, going beyond all karmas, still they were active. Na karma sannyasam kritavanta iti esha artha. They were active. They did not deliberately give up all activities. They continued doing the action, not for their own good, but for the good of the whole humanity. That should be the understood, the interpretation. Now Bhashyagara takes another view. Suppose you look upon Janaka as a spiritual seeker who have not attained the highest realization. Then what should be the interpretation? That is the subject. So the whole point is that those who have realized supreme reality will not engage in any karma, in any action with a selfish motive. If at all they become active, they will be working only for the good of humanity. They will be totally free from kartrutva and bhoktrutva. That is the idea behind. Atha nade tattvavidaha Ishvara samarpidena karmana sadhana bhudena samsiddhim sattva-siddhim ज्ञानोत्पत्ति लक्षणां वा संसिद्धिम् आस्थिताः जनकादयः इति व्याख्येयम्. Okay. Atha nate tattvavidah. Suppose you interpret the verse in from a different perspective, that great men, Janaka, Ashwapati, all these great souls, they had not realized the absolute truth. Then what should be the interpretation? That is given here. ईश्वर समर्पितेन कर्मणा साधन भूतेन संसिद्धिं सत्त्वशुद्धिं ज्ञानोत्पत्ति लक्षणां वा संसिद्धिम् आस्थिताः जनकादयः इति व्याख्येयम्. If you interpret the verse with the implication that Janaka had not realized the highest truth, then what happens? This performance of action was without any selfish motive. Rather, they were dedicating the karma and its results to God. Because those who have not realized the highest truth, when they perform karma, if they dedicate the karma and its results to God, then that performance of karma will help them to attain the highest spiritual fitness called Sattva Shuddhi or Chitta Shuddhi, mental purity. Such unselfish action performed with a sense of dedication of the results to God will help us to attain the spiritual fitness which eventually can lead to Jnana Prapti and Moksha. In that case, these unselfish actions performed with a sense of dedication to God becomes an instrument, a means for attaining Chitta Shuddhi, and once Chitta Shuddhi is attained, then Jnana Prapti and Moksha are the natural consequences. So, Sattva Shuddhim should be understood as Antakarana Shuddhi or Chitta Shuddhi. Jnanotpatti Lakshanam Vasam Siddhim. Okay. Now, if that is true, what happens? These unselfish actions dedicated to God become instruments in the attainment of Chitta Shuddhi or mental purity. That's a basic condition for attaining Jnana Prapti or the highest realization. Then it becomes an entire means for Jnana Prapti. So Karmanishthayaha Chitta Shuddhi Dvarena Purushartha Hedutvam Na Swatantrena. It's in an earlier version, it comes in the Gita elsewhere. So Karmanishtha, that is performance of all our actions with a sense of dedication to God, if every act becomes an act of worship, if every word becomes a sacred mantra when it is dedicated to God, when every thought becomes like meditation, and when the whole secular activities become spiritualized, when all our natural instinctive actions involving the senses and mind get a spiritual orientation, then all these activities become means for attaining mental purity or Chitta Shuddhi. And once Chitta Shuddhi is attained, we attain the highest spiritual fitness for the realization and liberation. Idi Vyakheyam. Edam eva artham vakshyati Bhagavan sattva karma gurvanti iti. So again there is a reference to another verse. In the 5th chapter, there is a verse Kayena manasa buddhya kevalaihi indriyairapi yogina karma kurvanti sangam tektva atma shuddhaye. So by our body, by our mind, by our intellect and by our senses, yogis, spiritual seekers or spiritually realized persons, they perform all their actions, abandoning all attachment, without any attachment, for purification of the the self. That's the idea behind. The verse is from the 5th chapter. In that verse, the Bhashyakara writes, Kayena, Dehena, Manasa, Buddhya cha Kevaleihi, Mamattu Varjidehi, Ishwaraya eva karma karumi, na mama bhalaya iti, Mamattu buddhi shunyehi indriyehi api. Kevala shabdaka kayadibi abhi pratyekam sambadhyati, sarva vyapareshu, mamada varjanaya yoginaha karminaha karma kurvanti, sangam tektva, phalavishayam atma shuddhaye sattva shuddhaye ityarthaha. So what should be the attitude of such spiritual seekers who look upon all their actions, bodily actions, mental actions, words, verbal actions, thoughts? All these are dedicated to God. I do all my actions not for my benefit, but for the sake of God. I am dedicating my action and also the results of my actions to God. With this attitude, when karma yogis perform all their actions, then their mind, their intellect, their thoughts, their ideas, all their secular activities get a spiritual orientation. In other words, the secular merges with the spiritual. The whole life gets spiritualized. And then what happens is, such karma yogis, they give up all their desire for the fruit of their actions, for the results of their actions. The only purpose is to attain mental purity. That's why Bhashyakara says, Yoginaha karminaha karma kurvanti sangam tektva phalavishayam atma shuddhaye sattva shuddhaye ityartha. They are doing all these for the attainment of mental purity. Swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindadi manavaha iti uktva siddhim praptasya cha punaha jnana-nistham vakshati siddhim prapto yatha brahma ityadina. So Bhashyakara is quoting from some other chapters here. Swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindadi manavaha. There is another very important quotation from the 18th chapter. The Bhashyakara says, all these verses show that spiritual seekers, when they are evolving, progressing, slowly growing step by step, approaching the highest Chitta Shuddhi, Jnana Prakti and then Moksha, they slowly evolve further and further, advance further and further. Then all their actions, all their words, all their thoughts get spiritualized. Another verse is quoted here. Yada pravurti bhudanam yena sarvamidam tadam sukarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindadi manava. So, this is Bhashyakara says, the Lord Krishna is going to make a statement in the 18th chapter, in 18th chapter 46th verse. So, those who already attained the highest realization, may continue the performance of all their actions. But those actions become the natural characteristics of highly evolved, realized souls who attained Atma Jnanam, who have realized the supreme truth. They may continue their work. In fact, many of the greatest spiritual teachers are examples of these Atma Jnanis, the realized persons, who continued their work. In fact, they worked much harder than they might have worked earlier, but not for any of their own ends, not for fulfilling any of their own desires or purposes, but for the good of the world, for the benefit of humanity. All great spiritual teachers are examples. So Bhashyakara is here referring to a verse that is going to be stated in the Gita in the 18th chapter. Swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha iti. So, iti uktva siddhim praptasya cha punaha jnana-nistham vakshati siddhim prapto yatha brahma ityadina. And not only that, later, just as those who have attained Chitta Shuddhi, how they attained Brahmacharya, such statements are going to be made again in the 18th chapter. So there are a few more verses which are quoted from 18th chapter. That is in the 50th verse of the 18th chapter. Siddhim prapto yatha brahma tata apnodi nibodhame samasena iva kaunteya nishtha jnanasya para. Bhashyakara is concluding, Tasmat Gitasu Kevaladeva Tattva-jnanat moksha praptihi na karma samucchidat iti nischitaha arthaha. Therefore, the central thesis, the central argument in the Gita is one attains the highest spiritual realization through pure knowledge alone. Pure knowledge not combined with anything else. That is, this is a clear refutation of Jnana-Karma Samucchayavada, which was upheld by some thinkers in ancient times. It is a philosophy that stands somewhere between the cutthroat Mimamsa ritualism and the highest Advaita concept of realizing the supreme truth through pure jnana. So Bhashyakara concludes, Tasmat, therefore Gita su kevaladeva tattva jnanat moksha praptihi. So the central teaching message of Gita is kevala tattva jnanat eva moksha prapti. The highest liberation or jnana prapti, which leads to liberation, can be attained only by pure knowledge. If a great spiritual teacher like Lord Krishna or Buddha or Shankaracharya himself, Sri Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, or many of the great saints, even after attaining the highest liberation, if they continued their work, we should remember they were working only for the good of humanity. They didn't have any purpose to fulfill, any desire to fulfill. Therefore, you don't find anywhere in the Gita, anywhere in any of these 700 verses, you can never find any statement that supports the view that Jnana-Karma Samucchayavada is the thesis of Gita. That is a complete refutation of Jnana-Karma Samucchayavada. Now the Bhashyakara continues, Yathacha ayam arthaha tatha prakaranashaha vibhajya tatra tatra dasyishyamaha. So the commentator makes a promise here. This idea, this central truth will be discussed and emphasized and demonstrated again and again in different contexts. So wherever there is a need, these points will be clearly emphasized in throughout the Bhashya. Tatra evam dharma sammudha chedasu makadi shokasagre nimagnasya arjunasya anyatra atmajnana uddharanam apashyan Bhagavan Vasudevaha tataha arjunam uddidharayishuhu atmajnanaya avatarayet aha. So Bhashyakara says, finding that there is no other means for the attainment of liberation other than pure knowledge. The Bhashyakara says, Lord Krishna is trying to slowly introduce the topic of this pure Atma Jnanam to Arjuna. Arjuna was submerged in the ocean of shoka and moha. He was totally in a state of complete confusion. He was much perplexed in mind and did not know what was his duty. So how to go ahead? Therefore, Lord Krishna is slowly introducing Arjuna, his disciple, to this philosophy of pure jnanam, because this pure jnanam doesn't ask us to remain inactive. Rather, after attaining the highest spiritual truth, we become more active, we become more efficient, we can work for the good of others, we can go about doing our duties and performing our responsibilities for our family, for the society, for the good of the country, for the good of the whole humanity in a much more efficient way. Because when we work without any selfish motive, we can work with great relaxation, but not with any kind of complacency. Lord Krishna never recommends any complacency. We should retain our efficiency, our sense of dedication, our sense of professionalism, our sense of work ethic. But at the same time, if we work with great attachment, as slaves of our own desires, then what happens? We become happy now and unhappy next moment. Results of our actions can make us happy for some time and then unhappy. If you become obsessed with the results, always worrying about the results, thinking about the results, full of anxiety for the results, then while doing work, our attention, our concentration, our focus could be distracted. So the quality of work may suffer. And then if the results are not exactly up to the expectation, we become disappointed, we become depressed. If the results are beyond expectation or up to the expectation, we may be happy. So the best way to avoid the problem of unhappiness is to stop looking for happiness. That will help us to go beyond the happiness-unhappiness equation, and you'll be able to work with great enthusiasm, efficiency, but with perfect serenity and a sense of equilibrium of the mind and with a sense of tranquility. That is the practical benefit of this great teaching. So Advaita itself becomes a great incentive for higher action, for greater efficiency, for superior professionalism and enthusiasm. That's a wonderful philosophy that's being built upon the great classic Bhagavad Gita by the Bhashyakara. So now Bhashyakara begins his commentary proper on the 11th verse. Ashocyan anusojastum prajna vadam sabhashase gadasun agadasumsya na anusojanti panditaha. So, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Lord said, Ashocyan anushochaha tum prajnavadan bhashase cha gadasun agadasum cha panditaha na anushojanti. This is the 11th verse. This is where the Bhashya proper begins. So the Bhashya begins, Nasocyaha asocyaha. The literal meaning, of course, can be given. Lord Krishna is addressing Arjuna. So we have to remember, Arjuna started his lamentation in the second chapter. Dushtvaimam sujanam Krishna yutsum samavastidam sidanti mamagatrani mukham chaparisushidi, etc. In the 28th verse of the first chapter, Arjuna begins his lamentation saying that he is totally confused, he doesn't know what to do, he was in a state of complete perplexity, chokamohagno nimagnaya. Shoka mahodadho nimagnaya, dharma samudachetaha. These are all different terms used in the Bhashya and the text. So that Arjuna was in a state of complete inaction, confusion, maybe called a withdrawal symptom. So what was the first what is the first method that Lord Krishna employs to lift Arjuna from the state of lethargy and inaction. The natural evolution of karma is that inaction out of laziness or out of ignorance or out of imbecility is the worst thing that you can have. It's always better to do something than doing nothing. If you cannot do anything without a motive, then better do something with a motive, because that's better than doing nothing. So inaction or inertia out of laziness or imbecility or ignorance is the worst thing. And better than that is to do something, to do our duty and perform our responsibilities with a sense of efficiency, with a sense of dedication, with a sense of enthusiastic, a sense of goal. Beyond that, there is karma yoga. If we can combine efficiency, enthusiasm, professionalism, work ethic, but also along with that a complete detachment. Detachment doesn't mean indifference or complacency. If we can do all our efficient work as an offering to God, then it becomes karma nishtha. That is, yogastha kuru karmani sangam tektva karotyeha, etc. So, that karma yoga, done with efficiency, but without any selfish attachment to the results, rather dedicating the results to God, becomes a means for higher spiritual evolution, because it takes us to the stage of mental purity or chitta suddhi. And once chitta suddhi is attained, jnana prapti and moksha are the natural consequences. So this is the scheme. So at this stage, Lord Krishna is trying to show Arjuna how foolish it was for Arjuna, for him to withdraw from his duty and his responsibility, giving false reasons, false justifications, as he did in the first chapter. Na shocyaha ashocyaha bhishma dronadeha. There is no reason for you to grieve, to show your grief, to worry about Bhishma, Drona, etc. You are worrying over those on whom you have no reason, no justification to worry about. But at the same time, you speak like a very wise person. Prajna vadam subhashasi. But a wise person do not worry about the dead or the alive, because the sign of spiritual wisdom is a kind of perfect equanimity of mind. The ability to look upon empirical life, its activities, from a higher transcendental perspective is a natural characteristic of a person of superior spiritual wisdom. Arjuna is speaking the words of a man of superior spiritual wisdom and realization. But actually, he was in a state of total inertia, total ignorance and confusion. So, first the Lord says, there is no justification for you to grieve, to show your grief or worry about these great masters like Bhishma and Drona. And Lord Krishna gives a very interesting reason why it is foolish to worry about Bhishma and Drona. Sadvrtatvad. So from a very empirical point of view, from a vyavaharika point of view, Bhishma and Drona were much better educated. They had superior knowledge of Shruti, Smriti and Puranas, Vedas, Smritis and Puranas. Bhishma, Drona, they were the great grand masters of the whole Kuru Pandava lineage. So they were extremely well educated, they were very wise. So there is no need for you, from a very empirical, worldly point of view, there is no need for you to worry about them, because they were not ignorant people, they were not children. Bhishma and Drona were among the wisest men living in the Kuru Pandava family, the dynasty at that time. Drona was the teacher of both Kauravas and Pandavas, and Bhishma was the grandchild of the whole lineage. So why are you worrying about great men, these senior people who know better than you about life, about the world, about duties? So why do you worry about them? So from an empirical point of view, there is no justification for you to worry about Bhishma and Drona. Paramartha rupena cha nityatvad. And from a spiritual point of view, there is even less justification for worrying about them, because they are not the physical bodies. The body-mind complex of the great teacher Drona or Bhishma is something that comes and goes. It is anitya, non-eternal. But in the true nature, they are nitya, they are atma. So from a paramarthika perspective, they are atma surupam, they are paramatma itself. Paramatma can never undergo any change. Jayade, asti, vardhade, viparinamade, apakshiyade, vinashyati. None of these changes, birth, existence, growing, evolution, decay and death, these 6 changes cannot happen to either Bhishma, Drona and other seniors whom you are supposed to fight with, and which you don't want to do. So there is no need, there is no justification for you to run away from your duties and obligations for any reason, because from an empirical point of view, they are well educated people, they are quite enlightened, they are enough worldly wisdom, means that they are superior to you. They are much better educated, much more knowledgeable on Sruti Smriti Puraneshu than you. And as for the spirit, from the higher spiritual perspective, they are Atman, and Atman is Nitya. So Paramartha Rupena sa Nityatva tan asocyan anusocaka anusochidavan asi. You are worrying about these great seniors, thinking that because of me they are going to die, and without them, what's the use of kingdom? What's the use of this royal pleasure? So Krishna is not asking Arjuna to fight. The point is, Arjuna was not running away from battle because of any superior spiritual wisdom. He was a man of this world. The Arjuna whom you find in the first chapter is very much a man of this world. He was full of desire. That's why he had come to the battlefield, armed to the teeth, to fight with his enemies. But at the same time, he is talking like a Uddhava, like a Buddha, like a man of great renunciation, which he was not. So if somebody, out of laziness, out of lethargy, out of confusion and ignorance, talks like a wise man, without attaining that wisdom, he is a hypocrite. In fact, that's exactly what Lord Krishna is going to call him later. Karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasasmaran indriyartha vimudhatma mithyachara sauchyati. Lord Krishna is going to use the word mithyachara, hypocrite. So we have to keep in mind, the Bhagavad Gita is not a book about war or battle. Bhagavad Gita is a book about the highest spiritual truth, spiritual realization. At the same time, the context happens to be the question of going about our duties and responsibilities as a responsible person, or running away from our righteous duties and responsibilities. Arjuna was trying to run away from his duties and responsibilities, and beyond that he was trying to give false justifications, talking like a big philosopher. न कांक्षे विजयं कृष्ण न च राज्यं सुखानि च किं न राज्येन गोविन्द किं भोगैः जीवितेन वा. Arjuna was a soldier whose duty was to help the poor, the women folk, the weaker sections of society. That's the duty of a Kshatriya, which is his sacred duty and responsibility. Because if he runs away from his duties, then people will suffer. So he should not run away from his duty. That's what Lord Krishna is trying to drive home. Tan ashocyan anushochaka anushocidavan asi te mriyante man nimittam aham taihi vinabhuda kim karishyami raja sukhadina ityadi, etc. So these are the wrong justifications, wrong arguments he is putting forward. Because of me, if I fight with them, they will die. And without them, what's the use of these comforts, kingdom, etc., these royal luxuries, etc. Therefore, these are the arguments that Arjuna puts forward. And Lord Krishna is trying to call the bluff of Arjuna's wrong arguments. Tum prajnavadan prajnavatam buddhimatam vadan cha vachanani cha bhashase. But you are talking like a great man of wisdom. So, total confusion, absolute ignorance, and false certifications, and little bit of hypocrisy, and along with that, the words of spiritual, apparently, the words of wisdom. So, this was Arjuna's position. So, Lord Krishna is trying to slowly take him to the highest spiritual wisdom, the real spiritual wisdom, not assumed or pretentious wisdom which is displaying now, but rather the real wisdom. That's what Lord Krishna is trying to instruct Arjuna. Tadedat maudhyam pandityam cha viruddham atmani darsesi unmatta iva iti abhiprayah. So, you speak the words of a wise person, but actually you are in a state of total confusion and ignorance. So there is a kind of mismatch. So you are talking like a mad person. You exhibit inconsistency in your conduct. Arjuna was preparing for this battle. Arjuna was not like Yudhishthira, who perhaps didn't want to go for anything. He would have been happy to go to a forest and sit under a tree, but Arjuna was different. Arjuna was a man of action. He was a successful man of action. And he had come to the battlefield to do his duty as he was supposed to do. And now, right now, at the point of performing his duty, he is exhibiting a kind of inconsistency in his conduct. So, it is a kind of dull-wittedness. It is not wisdom, though he is pretending to be a wise person. So that's why Lord Krishna says, Tadedat maudhyam pandityam cha viruddham atmani darsayasi unmatta iva. Almost like a madman. Idyabhipraya. Yasmat gadasun gadapranan mrdan agadasun agadapranan jivitaha channa anushojanti panditaha atmajnaha. Atmajnaha. You want to talk like a Atmajna, man of spiritual wisdom and realization. But they don't worry about. They don't run away from their duty. they don't shirk the responsibilities, giving false reasons. The highest Atma Jnanis are men and women of the highest level of duty consciousness. You find among them the same efficiency, maybe a higher efficiency, a higher work ethic and professionalism than people who are successful in worldly pursuits. But they be in a state of absolute tranquility. Their mind will be in a state of perfect equilibrium. There will be consistency in their conduct, serenity in their expression, and a sense of balance, a sense of restraint. And along with that, of course, as I mentioned, they will be very efficient, very active in the performance of the duties and responsibilities. Arjuna thought he can run away from the problems of action by running away from action, which Lord Krishna is going to describe. Of course, he is going to describe this phenomenon in the 3rd chapter, Karma Yoga. Arjuna thought, there are problems in this world if you do your duty. So, if we can run away from this world, this duty, then we can run away from the problems. But we cannot run away from problems by run away from duties. We can solve the problems only by performing our duties and responsibilities. We can transcend action only through action and not by running away from action. If we give up actions, then actions will follow us. If we do our duty, responsibility, then we will be able to transcend action. So, Lord Krishna says, Yasmat gadasun gadapranan murdan, agadasun agadapranan jivitaha, channa anusojanti panditaha atmajnaha. Wise men or wise women, do not worry, do not go about lamenting about those who are living or those who are dead. The men and women of superior spiritual wisdom will be in a state of perfect equilibrium. They will be beyond worry and beyond doubts. Panda atma vishaya buddhihi yesham te hi panditaha. So here is a famous definition by Shankaracharya. Who is a pandita? So a mantra is quoted from the Bhagavad Upanishad, most probably from the 3rd chapter. Who is a pandita? Panda atma vishaya buddhi yesham tehi panditaha. Wisdom or wise men or wise women. Who are they? Their mind and their intellect are oriented towards Atman. When they think about themselves, they don't interpret themselves as this physical body, which is changing all the time, which is perishable, or the mind, which again subject to changes, or the intellect, which also is subject to changes. So when we realize the highest spiritual wisdom, then we naturally interpret ourselves, we look upon ourselves as the Atman and not as this physical body. But Arjuna was always thinking about people like Bhishma, Drona, etc. as the physical body of Bhishma and physical body of Drona. But he is talking like a wise man. But Lord Krishna says, the real spiritual wisdom is the ability to look upon ourselves as the Atman, the immanent, the omnipresent, the eternal, the immortal, the transcendental, absolute reality. So, there is a quotation from the Vedas, from Yajurveda, that is Bhagavad Gita Upanishad, Pandityam nirvidya iti sutehe. So, the Sruti Pramanam is quoted here. Having attained the highest realization of Atman, Pandityam Nirvidya, etc. We will discuss this quotation later. Paramarthada tu Nityan Ashuchan anushojasi ato mudha asi iti abhipraya. So, in reality, paramarthadaha, all these living men and women, Bhishma, Drona, etc., about whom Arjuna was worried, they are in reality Atman alone. And that Atman cannot die. It is eternal. But at the same time, you are worrying about all this. You are worrying about human bodies, human body-mind complexes, which are non-eternal, which are mortal, which come into existence, exist for some time and then disappear. But Atman never comes into existence. And therefore Atman never ceases to exist. It never disappears. Because birth means coming into existence, apparently, empirical existence, from a state of empirical non-existence. And death is nothing but disappearance in empirical sense. That happens only to body, not to Atman. Atman is Aja and Avya. It is Nitya. Paramarthadaha tu Nityan Ashocyan Anushocasi. You are in fact worrying about those who are in their true nature, in reality Atman. And that Atman is Nitya. Therefore, you are not wise. Actually, you are Mudha. To Mudhosi iti abhipraya. You are showing the signs of a foolish person. It is foolish on your part to express your grief, your worry about things which are not immortal, which are not nitya, which are mortal and which are actually anitya. So, we'll continue the discussion in the next session. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.